All right, welcome to Contributing to LifterLMS, a guide to open source projects for new contributors. I'm Thomas Levy. I'm the co-founder of LifterLMS and our CTO. We're kicking off Hacktober Fest. Hacktober Fest is a large community event for open source contributors, maintainers, companies that support open source projects. This year it's hosted by DigitalOcean and Dev, which is a developer's blog. This is our second annual LifterLMS Contributor Month. We kicked it off last year in October. We had a lot of contributions. LifterLMS, many people don't know, is actually an open source project. That doesn't necessarily just mean that it's free. It also means that we accept contributions to the code base, to development, to design, to documentation from anybody interested in contributing for the most part, with some exceptions. So this webinar is going to basically explain how to contribute to an open source project in general. We're not necessarily only going to talk about how to contribute to LifterLMS, although that is kind of our goal and focus here. Is we'd like you, as somebody on this webinar who's hopefully in some way has a vested interest in LifterLMS, to contribute to LifterLMS. But what we're going to talk about here is going to apply very generally across any open source project. That could be the WordPress core. It could be another WordPress plugin that's hosted on the repository, assuming they do accept contributions. Not every free product does accept contributions. Lots of other things. Even things like PHP, which is the programming language WordPress works on, is an open source project that you can contribute to if you're if you're brave. So why would you contribute to an open source project? There's a number of reasons. The first, foremost, is that you can learn new skills and improve existing ones. Working on a large project, even a project like LifterLMS that has 3 core developers, the workflow and what you're going to do in that project, even if you are a developer who's been writing code for years and years and years, the workflows are going to be very different. So there's some new skills that you can learn and improve. Or if you're just beginning and you're maybe like a junior developer or designer, you can work with developers and designers that have the skills that you want to learn, and you can learn from them. And you also get to meet those people, and you can interact with them, and you could become a member of the larger community. So, and again, this doesn't only pertain to development. We'll cover that a little bit later, but there's a lot of other ways to contribute to an open source project that doesn't include writing code. Although with most of these projects, it is going to be writing code. That's going to be the primary form of contribution. But there's communities around every open source project, and by participating in the project and contributing, you get to really interact with those people and get to know them. This goes along a little bit with learning, but you can become a mentor. You can find a mentor. A lot of core developers that work on open source projects are always looking to help out new, younger developers, younger in experience, not necessarily younger in age, although that may be true. If you're looking to help out and teach, maybe you're an educator or you want to mentor those with less experience, you can help find those newcomers by contributing to open source projects. It's a great way to bolster your resume if you're looking to get a job as a developer. Or work on any of these open source projects, submitting code, documentation, design, specs, any of that kind of stuff. By contributing to those projects that are maintained by for-profit companies, it's a great way to get a job there. And any company, if you're a developer looking to get a job at an agency and you have an active GitHub profile with contributions to lots of open source projects, that's going to look really, really nice on your resume. And it's not only like a thing that you do for looks too. There's actual, like I covered before, there's a lot of experience you're going to gain by doing those things too. And lastly, if you're interested in the project and you really care about it, say you use it for your business, you can help affect change in that project by contributing to the project. It's really easy to say, I wish this thing did this thing. We get lots of feature requests in LifterLMS, and it's really easy to say, I want this to do that. But it's a whole nother thing to actually help move that thing forward and take some action and affect that change that you're looking for. And a little bit more about each one of these bullet points. If you're learning new skills and improving existing ones, there's lots of opportunity to gain exposure to new software platforms, libraries, or languages. LifterLMS has, or we'll back up, WordPress has recently started moving a lot more JavaScript into the WordPress core. The block editor that was released in December uses React components and things like that. Contributing to the Gutenberg project on GitHub is a great way to get exposure to React without having to start from scratch and learn everything you need to do. There's lots of other examples of that across open source projects. You get to participate in reviews. So most, I would say most, not all, but most open source projects are going to do code review on anything you contribute. And that's a really interesting process. Even for an experienced developer myself, whenever I have members of the LifterLMS team review my own code, it helps me get better. There's always something you can learn from somebody else, another pair of eyes, and you get to participate in those kind of code reviews, or maybe even do some of those code reviews also. That's another way you can contribute, is by looking at existing pull requests and performing or making suggestions about those submissions. And you also get to become familiar with coding and documentation standards or style guides and things like that. This is something that I've learned over time is really, really important as a project grows. When you're working on your own project and you're the sole developer or sole designer, you kind of know what your style guides are, you know what your documentation are, you know what your code does, so you don't have to really worry about documenting that much. But it becomes really, really important, and it's a really good skill to have. And you never want to start a new project where all this kind of stuff is required and have no idea what to do. So it kind of gives you an edge there to get started with it. When you're meeting and interacting with people, some examples of those people are the maintainers, the contributors. These people already have a shared interest in the project you're working on. One thing that maybe isn't that obvious is that open source communities are really warm and welcoming, especially the WordPress community. If you've never been to a WordCamp event or any WordPress-based conference, you might not know this, but WordPress people are really, really friendly. Everybody, they give hugs, they don't give handshakes, you know. Of course, some people do give handshakes. That's maybe a little weird, but open source communities, they want your help. They want you to participate. They want you to contribute. That's why they are open source. They're doing a service for the community by putting the software, this project out into the world. So by necessity, they have to be welcoming and encouraging. So it's a great place to come. It's like low barrier to entry, and people are going to be really friendly. And you can make new friends that way too. If you're watching this webinar, there's a chance you maybe work from home. That's not necessarily true, but a lot of us work from home and we don't get a lot of human interaction, and you get to meet people this way and really make friends. And some of my best friends in the world are people that I see at WordPress conferences 2 or 3 times a year, or developers that I only interact with on Slack and things like that. And you develop some really cool friendships, and you meet people they might never meet before that you have a lot in common with. And it's also, like I said earlier, you can build your resume, and then a lot of these projects are either supported by for-profit companies or owned and maintained by for-profit companies. LifterLMS is an example of that. We are a for-profit company. We're not a nonprofit. We do have employees. A couple of our team members are on the webinar here now, and it's a great way for you to kind of like shove your resume in there without having to actually submit a resume. We're not hiring, but the last couple of people we have hired have come to our attention through contributions to the project. One of our developers who's on the webinar now, I think, actually contributed last year. Was his first contribution to LifterLMS during Hacktober Fest, and he's now a core team member and developer. So it's a great way to get yourself in the door. And I know from experience, if you want to work at Automatic, which is a company that owns WordPress, they want you to contribute to WordPress before you even have a chance at getting an interview. I've applied several times over the years, not in a long time, but a couple of years ago, 8 or 10 years ago, I tried to get jobs at Automatic, and every time they're like, when are you going to contribute? When are you going to contribute? So there's that too. And then as far as finding or becoming a mentor, again, there's just learning all across the way. But part of code review, there's a little overlap here, is that you're always going to have to explain why you've made the decisions you've made and how you've come to make those decisions. And your mentor can help you with that kind of thinking. When you're stuck there's always somebody there to help you. And that's true even if you don't have an official mentor-mentee relationship. If you're contributing to an open source project, if you're talking to the core maintainers on GitHub, and you're looking to try to solve problems, if you ask for help, help will be provided. And of course, there's degrees of how much help is going to be provided. If you're saying, I want to write this code, but I don't know how to write this code at all, I don't know PHP, you might be in the wrong place and you need to back up and like learn some PHP first. But at the very least, members of that community are going to be able to help you put in the right direction to learn the skills you need to learn. And then if you're looking to become a mentor, there's always an opportunity to answer questions like these, to teach others, to explain what you've done or the decisions that you've made so that other people can help understand and maybe put that in their toolbox for the future. And again, on the career, again, there's a lot of overlap with a lot of this stuff, but you're always learning new skills so you can bolster your resume, you can improve your effectiveness, you could have justification for asking for a raise or a higher salary, that kind of stuff. And you're meeting people with similar, it looks like I maybe copied the wrong slide, so we'll skip that one. Yeah, cool. Yep, okay. Yeah, I think I copied, my apologies. So, and then as far as driving the development of that project forward, by contributing, you can have your voice heard in a really real way. And speaking as a maintainer of an open source project, somebody who's going to come to GitHub and open an issue and then submit a pull request, I'm much more likely to help move that feature or that bug or that issue or whatever they're looking to do forward than somebody who's just quote unquote complaining at me and just saying this is the way it should be and this is the way I want it. So it's a really great way to help drive development forward. And then again, as a core maintainer, you can provide really valuable feedback to the core team. We thrive here at LifterLMS. We thrive on community feedback, and that comes in all forms. I mean, we hear a lot of it in support requests, but getting it through GitHub and through contributors is really valuable too. And it's really cool. I have one really tiny small contribution to the WordPress core. I'm doing this whole webinar about contributing to open source projects, and I maintain one, but I just don't find the time to do a lot of open source contribution. But having this one little credit in the WordPress core was really awesome. And it was so tiny, it was like 10 characters maybe, but it's really empowering. It feels good. So speaking from that tiny experience, I would imagine getting some larger features or more regular contributions would be pretty awesome too. So what do we do? How do we contribute? What kinds of things? I mentioned earlier that we're not only talking about code, but of course, writing code is one of the easiest, biggest, most primary ways to contribute to open source projects. Open source is primarily software, so we're talking about code. But there's ways to contribute to the community. A huge thing in WordPress, for example, is the WordCamp events and contributing to those. So organizing community events like that. Helping to organize projects, design. LifterLMS is always looking for help improving interfaces. WordPress too, there's a whole WordPress core design team, and that requires no code at all. So if you're a designer, you can still contribute to open source software projects. And then writing documentation, writing tutorials, writing examples. So a little bit more about each one of those things. If you're a developer and you want to write code, there's always bugs to squash. So you can take a look at any of the open issues on the project's repository and start tackling those. Fixing bugs, and again, issues aren't always bugs, so there's a little bit of overlap there. But you can work on bugs. You can write new features, and one thing to kind of be careful with writing new features for an open source project is just because you think it needs to be a feature doesn't mean it should be a feature as far as the maintainers are concerned. So before you submit a pull request, it's always a good idea to open an issue and say, hey, this is the feature I want to write. What do y'all think about it? So that's just a little quick note. And there's always opportunity to write tools for the project, to code tests for the project. And if we back up a little bit to learning, something I see a lot more that's happening a lot more in WordPress is that plugins and open source projects around WordPress, like LifterLMS, are starting to do a lot more testing. And it's complicated. There's a lot to learn with testing. And from my experience, there's not a lot of great tutorials. But if you jump into the community, there's a lot of great like living examples there, and will help you get started on learning how to test code. And that doesn't really mean loading up a local site and just clicking some buttons. It actually means like automating tests and writing code to do those automated tests. Contributing to the community. There's a lot of ways you could do this online, just looking in the forums and the groups. LifterLMS has a Slack channel. We have the forums on WordPress.org. If you're just looking to contribute to WordPress, that could look like just any WordPress help forum in existence, and just answering questions or asking questions and helping with that. Moderating those forums and groups. LifterLMS has a Facebook group, an example of that. I'm not saying we're looking for a moderator, but whatever community you're looking for might need moderators, like official moderators that can help administer the forums and groups, and kind of direct the conversation in the community. Live events and meetups, like I said before, WordPress has, I'd say probably 2 or 3 WordCamp events every weekend, which are big, large live meetups. Organizing those kinds of things are really, really important to open source communities to help engage users in the community and like grow the community so that the project can thrive. And again, these are some examples of things that don't have any, like no necessity of writing code or designing or developing. You just need to have an interest, and you probably need some soft skills to be a people person, but that's not me exactly. So everybody has their own strengths. And then there's always presentations too. So if you're looking at any of those meetups, maybe you don't want to organize them because that's a lot of work, but maybe you just want to attend them and do some presentations because you have something you can teach, but you don't have ongoing time to actually mentor people within the project. So that's a really cool thing too. And then there's always like blog posts, if recording videos and tutorials, and all that kind of stuff is really, really awesome too and helpful. When it comes to project organization, some good examples of that are just like going through project issue lists and suggesting organizational issue labels. An example of that is LifterLMS has, we've probably got 10 different labels where we help organize the severity and what languages are required to tackle this issue and that kind of thing. So it's just kind of moderating and organizing the information, and there gets to be a lot. So that's a really helpful thing that you could do if you have no programming skills. Or maybe you're just really organized and you like kind of creating lists and organizing things like that. You can review stale issues. LifterLMS has a couple issues from 2016 that probably don't exist anymore. So they could use some cleanup. There's examples of that in any open source project where you can kind of see what's probably been forgotten about or fixed by accident and nobody realized that it got fixed and the issue is just still open. So you can like look at those issues. That's what we mean by a stale issue, and suggest closing them. One really huge thing is by validating open issues. Any open source project with any large number of users is going to get weird issues that are really niche and hard to recreate. And sometimes it's frustrating as a user of an open source project because you open an issue and say, hey, this is this thing that's happening. This is how I recreate it. And the maintainers might not be able to actually recreate that issue for one reason or another. And it could just be because it's a really niche thing that like is only going to happen in this specific scenario in my time zone on this system or something like that, But anyway, so if you're looking at issues like that the maintainers are struggling with, maybe you can try to recreate it and validate it. Or maybe you actually come across an issue that you're having that same issue and you just want to say, hey, this is happening to me too. That'll help the maintainers know that this isn't just like a niche issue. This is a more prevalent issue that we should probably be paying a little bit more attention to. So that kind of thing is helpful. And you can always clarify open issues with questions to move the discussion forward. So if you're seeing something that is just kind of hanging, it's not quite stale yet because it's not super old, but we probably need a little bit more information, you could ask some clarifying questions to whoever opened that issue and try to help move that forward so it doesn't become stale. If you're a designer, there's always usability improvements that can be made. Something that's become like really, really hot in WordPress recently is accessibility issues and making sure people with that require screen readers or different alternative web viewing tools can access the applications and the UIs and things like that. User experience research is a really interesting one that designers can perform. And that's kind of like just working with real users and watching how they use the application or the software, and seeing what's going on. And then providing a little report of what you found. If anybody watched the State of the Word at WordCamp US in 2018, Matt Mullenweg opened up the state with a lot of tweets from users who were using WordPress and the WordPress WYSIWYG editor. And then he showed some videos once he started with, which were live user sessions of users using the WordPress WYSIWYG editor and their live reactions to it. And it's kind of cringy, like it hurts a little bit because you're like, oh boy, it's pretty bad. And so that kind of stuff is really, really valuable, and it just kind of takes some time, and you can help distill that information and then hand it off to maintainers to then do something about. Creating and expanding style guides. Every project should have a style guide, but as projects grow, they need to be expanded, or even just auditing interfaces to ensure they obey and adhere to those existing style guides. Is something a designer could do. And there's always the opportunity to create new artwork, logos, stickers, shirts, any kind of swag, that kind of stuff. There's one pretty cool cryptocurrency project that I've been following for a couple of years now, called Navcoin, and they have a really, really active community around it. And there's one guy who's a cartoonist that draws all these cartoons about Navcoin. And he doesn't work for Navcoin. He's not a core member of the team. He's an artist, and he likes drawing little silly cartoons, so he does. But it has this really cool effect where it almost feels like it's part of that brand, even though it's an external person doing that. And it kind of creates a brand around the community or something like that. I've always found it really interesting how that happens. And then there's always documentation and tutorials. That's probably the most boring thing, but I've actually met some people over the years that really like writing documentation. And I could probably say that every open source project in the world could use documentation improvements. I know LifterLMS can. The WordPress core is always looking for documentation contributors, so they've admitted that they need help with documentation. And that could come in the form of creating new documentation, of course, improving existing documentation, or creating tutorials. And maybe that's something you do on your own. I mentioned before, like maybe you create some YouTube videos, or maybe you have your own blog and you write tutorials on your blog. And they can be examples of how to do things that maybe you're learning how to do and you want to just share that with other people. There's also, I didn't put this on this slide, but there's also like kind of inline documentation for the code bases. That's really helpful too. And most of that doesn't actually require any development knowledge, maybe the ability to use GitHub, but that's something that probably every open source project could use some help with too. So now you know what you want to contribute and you want to get started, and you actually want to contribute something. The best thing to do first would be to familiarize yourself with the project and with the community. You don't want to just show up and start telling people what to do or giving your feedback if that doesn't match the tone of what's already going on in the project and community. So a good way to do that is join the community's communication channels. A lot of these open source projects are going to work within GitHub. Although if you're looking at contributing to the WordPress core, they have their like the track and everything's hosted on SVN. And they do most of their issue management on the make, I think it's make.wordpress.org, but they have kind of a different place. But most of these other projects are going to end up being on GitHub, although there's some stuff going on now with GitHub and pricing. So some people are moving over to GitLab or to Bitbucket. But whatever those communication channels are, wherever the repository is, you want to join up and start following the project. See what's going on. A lot of projects have their own Slack channels. I know it's like one more Slack channel, but it's a great way to interact directly with people. There's probably forums, there's Facebook groups, there's all sorts of different community channels. So figure out what they are and join them. Always review the project guidelines and policies. Most projects are going to have contribution guidelines. Make sure you read and follow those. You don't want your first contribution to an open source project to be met with, please follow the guidelines. You can read those first. They're available to you. They're public. read them first and then submit, make sure you're following them. It's kind of like submitting a resume. And when they tell you like, you know, enter this word in your cover letter and you ignore that or something like that, like just follow those little things. Nobody's trying to trick you, but we put project guidelines in place to save us time and to make sure that your first contributions are successful. So help us with that, of course. And you never want to be breaking any policies. You know, that's bad news. And then also make sure you just gather some context around the project's recent history. You don't want to come in ignorant. You don't want to be opening issues that already exist and have been closed for one reason or another, or you know. So just kind of see what's going on, familiarize yourself, and then you can kind of get started. You want to make sure you know who the maintainers and the contributors are. That's usually really easy if you're looking at GitHub. Just see who the top contributors are on the contributor list. Whoever has the most commits is probably one of the maintainers. Sometimes there's like a humans.txt guide or something like that that tells you who the humans are that you want to report to or talk to, or what their roles and responsibilities are, things like that. But get to know them. You want to make sure the project is actually open source and that it's accepting contributions. There's probably not that many examples of code bases on GitHub that are not open source but are listed on GitHub, but there could be. It could be like a weird project, but it is very possible that the project isn't actively accepting contributions. There's lots of reasons why a project might say, yes, we are open source, but we're not accepting contributions at this time. Usually they have like a little flag at the top of the repo that lets you know if contributions are welcome or not. So that's pretty easy to check out. You want to check if there's open issues and pull requests. It's actually one thing that I always do when I want to see, like, should I use this open source project, is whether or not there's active issues and active open pull requests and things like that. If a project has like 20 open pull requests that haven't been touched in 2 years, likely they're not actively maintaining it, and you might want to move on to another project. If there's the same thing for a lot of issues, if the core maintainers and developers aren't responding to open issues, then it maybe just got abandoned. And you want to make sure the project's welcoming, unless maybe you're just like a irrational combative person that just wants to argue all the time. But you just want to make sure the project meets the tone of whatever your kind of tone and philosophy is and your relationships. You don't want to get yourself in a situation where you're unhappy with the with that community. So when it comes to joining the communication channels, it's important to note like where they congregate and discuss the project. LifterLMS does most of our conversations directly in GitHub, but we do a little bit in our monthly working groups and our dev office hours and bug scrubs and things like that. WordPress does all of their stuff on Slack in their regular meetings, and then they post rundowns on their blog. So just check into those things, find out what they're doing. And again, you can always join these channels and just introduce yourself. Depending on the size of the project, that might be harder to do. For example, if you jump on like the WordPress core Slack and say, hey, I'm so-and-so, there's a lot, like it's a fire hose in there, and you might not get noticed. So it might be actually better to find a contributor and introduce yourself directly. But with a smaller project like LifterLMS, if you jump on our developers channel and say, hey, I want to join the community and start doing stuff, I'm going to talk to you almost immediately, depending on what time of day it is and how tired I am. And then if there are meetings, it's really great just to jump in and say, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm just following along. That's a really great way to kind of orient yourself and do some of the stuff I mentioned earlier about familiarizing yourself with the project. If you're just listening to a meeting, you're going to get a lot of information about how the maintainers interact, who they are, all that kind of stuff you're going to get really, really simply. I mentioned before with the project guidelines and policies, the README is like almost every project's going to have a README file in the root of the project's code. But then there's documentation stuff too. There's contributor guidelines. Every project will probably have a license. It's good to kind of know what kind of license it is, and what that means for your contributions to the project. And gathering context, like I said before, reviewing issues, discussions around the issues, reviewing pull requests and what they're trying to do. And that's another great way to kind of know who the community members are, who the contributors are, who's most active, and that kind of stuff. So now you've gotten it, you're ready to go, and you can make your first contribution. You always want to communicate effectively, gather the context. you're going to literally just open a new, this also gets like pretty technical, this part. There's a really great guide I'm going to link to at the end that's that like walks you through step by step with screenshots and everything you need to know about how to actually open an issue or make your first contribution on GitHub. It's a little bit more complicated if you want to like contribute to WordPress, for example, because that guide's not going to apply. But if you're looking, you can hit me up on Slack or anything, and or ask at the end. We can provide you with some other resources for that. But I'm just going to run through it kind of generally here. But you'd open a new issue, or maybe contribute to an existing issue. Like I said before, you can maybe leave some comments on the issues, or ask some clarifying questions or something like that. You're going to open a pull request. I'll cover a little bit more detail later what a pull request actually means. I know I've mentioned that a couple times, but it's maybe a somewhat confusing term that we'll define in a moment. And then, of course, participate in discussion around the contribution. You never want to contribute something and then disappear. You always want to stick around. So in order to communicate effectively and gather context, if you're like opening a new issue, or if you're maybe helping provide some information on a pre-existing issue, you always want to provide accurate reproduction steps. That I found over time sounds like something that developers make you do for no reason. But having maintained LifterLMS for a long time, there's issues I've opened in the LifterLMS core project, and I haven't provided reproduction steps. I've just put like a little summary of what the issue is. And then even 3 months later, when I go back to it, I'm like, what was I talking about there? So by providing those reproduction steps, it helps kind of safeguard against us having no idea what we meant. Even ourselves, our memories are really terrible as humans. So if it's just like step-by-step guides of what you do as a user or developer, you don't have to solve the problem. You just have to let us know how to see that problem ourselves. If you're, creating something for like a new feature request, if you have a new idea of some kind, you want to explain why that idea is generally useful to the project. One thing I always like to note here is that it's really hard to, as a maintainer, to accept every idea as generally useful to the entire project. We have to be really careful what we accept. WordPress core is in this situation too. It's no matter how important that idea is to your particular project, it might not be generally useful. So when you're contributing, you want to just think with empathy and just try to objectively determine, is this something useful to me, or is this something useful to everybody? Just to be a little blunt, every time we get a feature request, it's usually in the form of, this is important, why doesn't this exist? Everybody needs this. And that's just not really that true. So I just try to keep that in mind, and don't be offended if the maintainers come to you and say, hey, that's a great idea, but it's not generally useful to the entire community and project. And that kind of backs us up into something about a larger ecosystem. Is just because it's not going to go into the core doesn't mean you can't develop it on your own, especially within the WordPress space. LifterLMS is a plugin that extends WordPress. There's plugins that extend LifterLMS. WooCommerce has a gigantic ecosystem. And if every single one of those like third-party plugins that exists to provide additional features to WooCommerce existed within WooCommerce core, the code base would probably be a gigabyte large, and it would just be super confusing because there'd just be so much stuff. So core projects always want to kind of shrink and help keep themselves small and really targeted. And then the ecosystem can help expand that functionality too. And that's a great way to contribute to the community also, is to build third-party projects, external plugins, things like that. If you're opening a new issue, you always want to check the documentation and look for issues, pre-existing issue duplicates. You don't want to open an issue that was opened 2 weeks ago or even yesterday and say, hey, I have this issue too. It would be better to search for it and then comment on that pre-existing issue with additional information rather than just opening a new one. As a maintainer, it just creates more noise, and we're gonna see it. We're gonna know it's a duplicate. We're just gonna say, hey, this is a duplicate. We're gonna close it anyway, so help save us our time. Always keep communication short and direct. That doesn't mean don't provide adequate context or lengthy reproduction steps if they're required. But what it means is we don't really need to know your backstory in order to solve a problem. A great way to communicate is to record a video and upload that video and like showing the reproduction steps. But that means that we need to download the video and watch it. And there's a tendency to sometimes ramble like I'm doing right now for the past 34 minutes. You don't want to just give us a whole bunch of tangential information that may not matter. Let's just like keep your communication really targeted. And again, I don't mean that doesn't mean you can't have a lot of communication. It just means like try to give the necessary details and not a lot of non-essential information. Please don't use emojis when you're submitting issue requests, please. That's that has nothing to do with short and direct. That is a way to shorten communication, I suppose, but I have to translate it too much. It's confusing. Please don't do that. Use the public channels wherever possible. It might seem like sending a direct message to one of the WordPress core developers might be a really easy way to alert them to an issue. But when you're maintaining or participating in an open source community, the fact that that information is public actually helps us solve the problems faster because there's more people that can chime in. There's other community members and contributors that might jump in and help solve that problem. But if you give it directly to one person, that one person is now in charge of keeping it in their head and logging it and things like that. So, and a lot of times if you DM somebody privately, they're going to tell you, hey, could you please post that in GitHub anyway? So sometimes it just saves time just to go post it in GitHub. Of course, if there's like a public channel too, you could always post there and say, hey, I'm seeing this issue. Has anybody seen this before? And that might be a way to kind of crowdsource your searching or something like that. So that's kind of acceptable. Just try to avoid DMs when you're reporting issues or have new ideas or things like that. And always be patient. You have to remember, especially with a large project like WordPress, like there's a lot of stuff going on there, and your issue is one of probably 1,000 issues. So it might take time, and if you don't hear back right away, that doesn't mean you're being ignored. Although if you don't hear back after a week, it might be nice just to bump it and make sure it hasn't been missed or fallen off somebody's radar. Remember, again, this kind of chimes in with the, is it useful to the project as a whole, but respect the decisions of the community. There might be disagreements, and there's a great opportunity to have open discussions and communicate back and forth and ask more questions. And it's of course acceptable to say, hey, why have you come to that decision, or how have you come to the decision? But if a decision has been reached by the community, it's important just to kind of respect that and move on, and not argue about it too much. When you're opening a new issue, you want to report an error you can't solve on your own. That's a really good reason to open a new issue. Or maybe it is something you can solve on your own, but it's a bug, and you want the core developers and maintainers to be aware of that. You could propose a new feature or a new idea, or you can ask a question you can't find an answer to. Issues don't always have to be bugs. It could just be like, hey, how do you do X? Do keep in mind, though, that most open source projects have support forums. So if you're looking for technical support on how to use the product, it might be a better option to use the support channels than to like open an issue in GitHub. But it depends on the project and the community. And again, that's something you could figure out from the project's README. If you go to LifterLMS README, we remind you that this isn't a support forum. So if you're just looking for a question on how to install LifterLMS, you'd be better suited to talk to our support team in the support forums or via email. But if you are installing LifterLMS and then you encountered an issue where it doesn't work with plugin X or Y, that might be an error that you want to report. So you're not necessarily asking how to do it, but you found an issue with it. So there's a little nuance there, Like I said before, if you're contributing an existing issue, you want to make sure you avoid duplicate efforts. So always search first and make sure that this doesn't already exist somewhere else. Or that maybe it's a known issue, or maybe there's an old issue that's been closed where the maintainer said, sorry, like we're not going to fix that because it's out of scope or something like that. If you're looking to actually write code or fix an issue or tackle an issue, you should always let people know that you're going to do that. That way you don't run into collisions, and you don't want to have a situation where two contributors both are working on the same thing and stepping on each other's toes or something like that. You can always ask questions about those stale issues I talked about before. Or if you've found a potential solution and maybe you don't know how to actually solve it, but you've got an idea for it, that's a great way to contribute to an existing issue. When you're actually writing code or fixing issues, improving documentation, stuff like that, the way that this is going to work is you're going to open a pull request. A really great way to start this if you're a new contributor is find good first issue labels and tags. This is like one of those standard stock tabs. If you create a new repository on GitHub, they add the good first issue label for you. But this is a label that core maintainers can use to signify like, this is probably pretty easy. And if you've never contributed to this project before, this is a good place to start. So take a look at those. Typos and broken links, those are really, really easy things to point out or to fix. Again, that's not necessarily writing code. It's like spell checking. We've got a contributor that a couple months ago spell checked the entire LifterLMS project. It made me realize that I should be running a spell checker in my IDE, but it was a great contribution because it helps improve the quality of our documentation and code base for everybody. You can work on a contribution which was tasked or discussed in an issue. One thing to remember too is that pull requests don't necessarily need to be finished, although the likelihood of them being like actually accepted when they're unfinished is low. However, it's a great way to get some early code review on your ideas and get feedback on what you're working on, especially with more complicated problems that we're trying to solve. When you're participating, so you always want to participate when you're contributing to. I mentioned before, like don't just submit your PR and then disappear. You want to hang around. You want to keep an eye on it. Wait for a response. Like I said, if you don't hear anything immediately, that doesn't mean anything really. It probably just means maintainers are busy. But if you don't hear anything after a week or two, it might be an opportunity to just be like, hey, what's going on, guys? Have you found this? Hear this? Am I alive? And like I said, everything's going to be reviewed. Nobody's just going to click that accept button. They're going to kind of review your code. They might ask questions, ask for changes. A big one is that coding standards weren't followed. So keep an eye on that kind of thing. Remember that your contribution can be declined. Opening a pull request is a request for your contribution. So we might tell you no, and then you got to be okay with that. And that's just kind of part of it. It's just like, I guess maybe applying for a job, you don't get every job you apply for. So you kind of got to steel yourself against that. And when it does get accepted, you want to celebrate. It's a big deal that when you contribute to an open source project. So make sure you kind of pat yourself on the back, maybe go buy yourself a drink or ice cream cone or coffee or something like that and celebrate in whatever way you find most appropriate. I'm not suggesting that you do anything dangerous. So that's kind of how to contribute. We're getting near the end here, and I just want to kind of go over the whole reason we're doing this webinar is because of this event called Hacktober Fest. I don't know how long they've been running Hacktober Fest. I think we're in our 4th or 5th year maybe that DigitalOcean's been running this with different partners. It's our 2nd annual LifterLMS Contributor Month. For all of the stuff we've covered before, you can do all of those things that we talked about getting to know the community, familiarizing yourself with the project, affecting change. Everything I covered before, that's something you can do specifically to LifterLMS here. The Hacktober Fest contest itself, if you go to, I'll drop the link in here in a couple slides, but you can actually register with DigitalOcean, and if you submit 4 pull requests to any project on GitHub during the month of October, you get like a special t-shirt, some stickers, prizes, stuff like that. Maybe not stickers, but definitely a t-shirt. So we're going to be celebrating this, that if you contribute 1 or 3 at least 1, but 3 or more pull requests to LifterLMS that get accepted during the month of October, we're going to have some special prizes. Last year we did 1, 3, and 5, and nobody actually successfully contributed 5, but we had a couple people that did 4. Last year, GitHub did 5. They've lowered it to 4 this year. So we're just doing 1 and 3. If you submit 1 pull request, you're going to get some LifterLMS stickers. If you submit 3, you're going to get some stickers and a t-shirt. Those stickers too are going to be like limited edition Hacktober Fest stickers, LifterLMS Contributor Month and Hacktober Fest stickers, as well as just some like regular LifterLMS logos and stuff that we have lying around. And then everybody who enters will also get like for every pull request you submit, you're going to get an entry into a drawing that we're going to draw at the end of October for, I don't remember what it was. It's in a blog post. I should have put it on the slide too. I think we're doing a license to any LifterLMS add-on up to $199. Kathy, do you remember what that was?
Yep, it was an add-on of your choice up to $199
okay.
is the giveaway. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you can get one add-on of your choice up to $199, which means you can get any add-on in the store. The advanced add-on is included for a year. So that's a pretty cool prize. And again, if you submit 4 pull requests, that's 4 entries into that drawing. And then all of that stuff is going to double because LifterLMS is on GitHub. Anything you contribute to the LifterLMS core will also double as contributions to the general Hacktober Fest prize. So you could potentially get a LifterLMS t-shirt, $199 add-on, some stickers, and a cool Hacktober Fest t-shirt too for your contributions to the LifterLMS. Or, you know, do 1 to LifterLMS and 2 to Yoast and 1 to WooCommerce, or I don't know, anything. One thing to note about Hacktoberfest is that they encourage you to use maintainers like ourselves to use the Hacktoberfest tag on issues. So if you go to GitHub and just search like issue and the label Hacktoberfest, you're going to get tons of open source projects. Lots of companies participate in this. I think when I looked the other day, there was like 40,000 Hacktoberfest issues that you can contribute to on GitHub. It might have been 400,000. I don't know. It was a big number. It's like one of those numbers where it's like that's big. You don't even know what it is. So. And you know, the other reason here is we are an open source project, so we have a small number of people who contribute to LifterLMS regularly, and we're really grateful to them. We have a larger number of contributors that the small number of people who contribute code. We have a larger number of people that participate in our LifterLMS working group. That's a public meeting for LifterLMS users that we have once a month. That's a way to contribute to the community by providing feedback for us. We have a lot of people that are recording videos on YouTube that are creating tutorials outside of WordPress. We have third-party developers building plugins and themes around LifterLMS, things like that. So these are all different ways to contribute. And we want to help encourage you to contribute in those ways. And also just note too that since last year, we've added 2 more public repositories that are part of the LifterLMS core. So when I talk about contributing to LifterLMS, I'm also talking about contributing to our other auxiliary repositories. Actually, you know what, I say 2, but there's probably 5 or 6. Anyway, we've got our blocks library that's blocks for the block editor, the WordPress block editor. We've got our REST API repository, which houses the the LifterLMS REST API. We've got, of course, the LifterLMS core plugin. But then we've got some auxiliary stuff too. We have a testing library that powers LifterLMS tests across all our projects. We have a coding standards library that standardizes coding standards across all our projects. We have a Node.js API wrapper library. We're working on a PHP one. So there's a lot of different projects that you can contribute to within the LifterLMS core. It's not just the core plugin. And I think that's about all I have. I'm just going to go through these real quick. These are some, whoops, let me back up. There we go. Those are some just great resources. I don't think I put these in the blog post, but afterwards I'll just copy all these over into that blog post too. These are some resources for you during the month of October to take a look at. The first one is just an introduction to open source. It's a longer written version of what I've gone through here. Published by DigitalOcean, how to create a pull request. That I mentioned earlier, that is like a really technical guide on how to use pull requests on GitHub. If you've never submitted a pull request before, it is something of a complicated process. It's not complicated, it's just if you've never done it before, it's not super obvious what's going on, how it works, why you're doing it. So that's a great read. It's got a lot of screenshots. It's not like technical as in complicated, it's just, it walks you through everything. I reviewed guides like that the first time I ever submitted a pull request. It's not super obvious. We have our contributor blog at make.lifterlms.com. Our contributor month main page, it's just a blog post. And that getlifter.com/LLMS first issue is a link to all the good first issues across the LifterLMS core projects. And then that last one, Hacktoberfest resources, is a really cool GitHub repository maintained by just a guy. I don't know what his affiliations are or anything, but it's just a giant list of all different resources You'll see some of these resources duplicated on there, but for anybody looking to participate in Hacktoberfest or contribute to open source projects, it's a great thing to take a look at and refer to. And I believe that was all I had. I'm going to, Kathy, do you think I should keep Q&A on the recording or should I just stop it?
It's up to you. I don't see anything in the Q&A box right now.
Oh, are there any? Okay, so maybe, well, anyway, I'll do some Q&A if anybody has any questions. Otherwise, we'll take off. And oh, the last thing I did want to mention too is we do an office hours once a week on Wednesdays in our Slack channel. Just an opportunity to talk to me or any of the other core developers, although it's usually just me because our other developers are probably asleep at that time, I hope. But during the month of October, we're also doing Monday and Friday auxiliary office hours specific for like people who want to contribute to LifterLMS. So those are all on the events calendar at make.lifterlms.com/events. So if you're interested in actually contributing to LifterLMS during the month of October, there's 3 times a week through the month of October where you can talk directly to me. And my job during that half hour every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday is to help you start contributing. I really, really want to give away t-shirts. So join me then, say hello, and practice some of that stuff I talked about. Introduce yourself, say hello, let me know what you're doing, what you're interested in, and if you're looking at that list of first issues and you don't know where to start and you're a little overwhelmed, there's probably like 60 of them or so for LifterLMS. That could be kind of an intimidating list. Hit me up. This is an okay opportunity to direct message me and just say, hey, I'm looking to contribute. This is my skill set. This is what I'm interested in. I'll help find something you can take a shot at. Okay, so now, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Are there any questions? Again, Kathy, you said there's no Q&A. Where's the Q&A thing? Yeah, there's no Q&A. You should raise your hand, put them in the chat. Anything? No? Maybe? Yeah, I don't have a gavel, but we've got 3 minutes left, and I timed that almost perfectly. So that was pretty good. All right, we'll call it a day. Thank you, everybody who came out and participated. Thank you, everybody watching on the replay. Thank you, everybody who's contributing. Take care. Oops, wrong button. There it is.